Hi everyone. So we would begin shortly. Kindly share the link. If you can hear me on YouTube, maybe just
Hi
let me know.
everyone. So we would begin shortly.
Hi everyone.
Okay. All right. So welcome again, everybody, to the Nigerian Law School live Q&A with the BGS, Busayo and Benedict. It's amazing to have them here. And so just a quick one, kindly share the link with people who you think should need this or who needs
to, ask questions and everything. And without much ado, I have the pleasure to welcome the two BGSs. I mean, it's such an honor to have both of them here. So, welcome, Busayo and Benedict. So, like virtual hand clap. So, at this point, I'm gonna take myself off or take this image off and then make our two stars the highlights. So, yeah, take it away, Busayo. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so Busaya, we would love to see your face as well. So yeah, okay, amazing. This is really nice. Okay, yeah. Um, I will ask the first questions. So then I'm sure people always like when someone goes first, then everyone starts to ask question. So this question is just like an icebreaker. Did you think you were going to be the BGS, or like how confident were you that you're going to be BGS? Because both of you were actually BGSs of your uni. So, and I don't know, can you just take us through that? Did you, before law school, you began law school, how did you mentally and every wise prepare to repeat that same feat of becoming a BGS in Nigerian law school?
Okay, do you want me to go first or
Anyone?
okay. And so for me, I had different stages of, like say, dream or aspiration going to Nigerian Law School. Initially, I wasn't going to Nigerian Law School with the aim of being BDS or so really. I just wanted to have a first class at the start of it, right? And so I was mentally some sort of confidence that if I so I was sort of confident that if I took the right steps, some of the tips I was given, I could manage, I could get a first class. So that was essentially my goal. But then while getting to the Nigerian Law School, I attended some webinars and then my goal changed a little bit to, oh, okay, maybe I can be a prize winner, take one or two prizes. Really, that was just it. And then so that was it for the most part until let's say during Nigerian Law School, people started, referring to me as BGS, like our BGS, even like just that's like the middle or so of law school. At that point, that's when I realized that okay, being BGS was not really far away. And then but really, it didn't really even change what what I had been doing because I was studying in a way that every single point was important. Though that essentially was like you studying for BGS, but that was not essentially the goal. But then, like I said, during the middle of law school, when people started referring to me, I became self-conscious of that goal, and then I tried to work towards it as well.
Benedict, you're on mute though.
All right, all right. I think you can hear me now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think my story is quite similar with Busayo's, but not very similar. And I would explain, from my undergraduate level, just like you said, I made the first class, and it was actually the first time in a big while that anybody made a first class from my faculty. And so the expectation from my lecturers and even from myself was that I had to get a first class from law school. In fact, one of my lecturers told me that, Ben, don't go to law school and disgrace us. So for him, I mean, that was for him anyway. If I didn't get a first class from law school, I was disgracing the faculty or whatever. But that was his own point of view anyway. So I went to law school with the consciousness that I had to work for a first class, and I did work for it. At some point, I also knew that it was actually possible to, get some prizes. But throughout the duration of my law school, I'll be very honest, I was never sure that I was going to, the BGS or even get a prize, because I mean, after my corporate law exams, I was like, wow, am I actually even going to make a first class? But after the exams, and in fact, close to the call to bar, someone reached out to me and was like, the head of academics from Abuja campus told them that for the first time in, it's up to 10 years or so, the BGS is from Abuja campus. And when I heard that, I was like, wow, that could actually be me. That was the first time I actually believed that, okay, maybe I could be BGS. And that's how it turned out. So initially, my goal was just to make a first class, if possible, win some prizes. But maybe obviously the amount of work I put in actually earned me the BGS. So that's my story.
Wow, super cool. So apparently, people are still gearing up to ask questions. They're shy, but so I got some questions in the DM, but so there's this question. People ask like, what materials did you use? Did you use? Okay, I won't mention this, but if you want to, and then what was your style of reading? Like, I want to actually compare both of your styles. Did you have? Let me from your answers, we'll know if there's like a secret BGS style. So, what materials did you use? How did you read? And yes, so let us know your secrets.
Oh,
I would like to say that there is no BGS style really. I know that in terms of the materials I used, it's different from the material that the previous BGS before myself used. And I'll wait for Benedict to speak so that I will know if we even use the same materials, which I doubt. But well, in terms of the materials I used, I had some sort of hierarchy to the materials. My class notes were of paramount importance, right? So they were my major source. I tried as much as possible to take down 99% of what was being said in class. And I was a fast writer, so I had almost everything I was said in class. Then I supplemented it with some of these popular materials. So you hear of Agbata, Badmos, Kondi, Mayowa. Some have even come up after my set, really. But then I used Agbata, and that was just specifically because it resonated with me. It was material was easier for me to comprehend and to use. So this is not to say it's better than other materials. Other materials are better. It was just a personal choice for me. Then I supplemented it with those. And that was it majorly. Though before classes, I made use of textbooks for the purpose of understanding. So I'll read those textbooks as just the way you read a novel or like a storybook, just to have a generic understanding of the topic. Then after class, when I want to properly read, I do away with those textbooks because the information will have been gauged into what has been taught in class and to those little additionals I could get from those textbooks. Now, it's from those materials really. I used a particular one, yeah. So that was the one I used. But then in terms of my reading style, uh, like I said, I immediately just used the reading style I had in university, where I made some some edits. I had to sort of make some little adjustment because of the nature of law school, right? So my reading style was I read directly from sources. I don't write while reading. So I read directly from what I've written. So I read directly from my notes. So if you see me reading, you see my notes with me. You will see my tab where I had my materials, and if need be, you will see me with either a physical law because I had grammar physically, but other laws I mostly use them. Maybe I will read them from my phone. So that's how I read. I read directly from the source. People had different insights. Some people had to write while reading. Some people had separate books. People had different reading styles of reading, but that was essentially my.
Okay. For me, the materials I used, I also used a number of materials. I didn't just use one particularly, but at the earliest stages of my law school journey, that is when we're just starting off. I mostly use Badmos. I used Badmos in the beginning. Like Busayo said, it's not. I'm not saying Badmos is better than other materials out there. I used Badmos in the beginning because I discovered it gave a granular explanation of the principles. So even though I was just starting out, I was able to have, should I say, a complete and holistic understanding of the topics as at then. Because from what I discovered, some other materials they were very brief and straight to the point, and they were like summaries. So they didn't really give me in that context that I needed to understand information that I was encountering for the first time. For instance, you've not read the topic at all, and then you now pick up a material that is like a summary of the entire thing. I don't think that would have given me enough depth that I needed at that point, right? So that's why I used Badmos in the beginning. But as time went on, of course, Badmos, like I said, it's very elaborate. So you don't have the time to go through several tens of pages, for just um, a particular topic. So what I usually did when I studied after every lecture was that I put down a summary of the particular topic when I was studying it. Busayo said he doesn't, he didn't really take down anything while studying. But for me, that is what I did. And that goes to show that there's just no one way to getting the first class of BGS. It's what works for you. So for me, after every lecture, when I go back to study later in the day, I would break down the topic, right? Into I'll just write down the principles that comprise the entire topic, and then the authorities for those principles. So by the time I pick up my summary notes, if you can call it that, for every topic, you could see that I already had almost all the principles down and the authority. So it was very easy for me when it was time to revise. It was very easy for me just to glance through my notes, the summary notes that I made. It was not elaborate at all, because I mean, for law school you don't need to put down something very elaborate, because I mean, in the end you don't really need much, right? So by the time I picked up my summary notes, I would already have a snapshot of each topic that I wanted to look at for that day. And then one other studying method that I used was I used class tags a lot, right? What I did was I had a Word document for each course: professional ethics, corporate law, civil litigation. I had a Word document, and this was this was way deep into law school anyway. So I compiled the class tags from each campus. It was from three campuses, I think: Abuja, Lagos, Port Harcourt. I'm not saying the other ones are not important, but then I compiled all the class tags, because if you look at those class tags, you would see that there actually is an entire summary of those topics. So I had class tags from three campuses, and if you work with Word documents, you know that there's a way you can make comments on questions. So for each of those questions, I'll just briefly make a comment, put the answer there, the authority. That's what I did. So when it was time to revise, I just picked up my Word documents for each of those courses. I looked at the comments. Sometimes I use what I call active recollection, or what is actually called active recollection. If I look at the questions, I ask myself, okay, what is the answer to this question? What are the authorities? And then, of course, I'll try to remember. Most times I remember. If I did not, is just to open up the comment and see what I wrote there, right? So that was basically how I approached my studies. I also looked at, for some topics, I had to consult other materials. I had to even read up a textbook. That is, if I was finding it very hard to comprehend. So it was just, a mixture of my summary notes and then the materials I used, and then of course the class tasks. So that is how I approached my studies, and then of course the materials I used for the entirety of law school. And I think it's important to say that it won't really serve anybody well to just jump from one material to the other, because from, I don't know, this is how my own study method, or how I am able to really understand stuff, right? If I have a particular material, if I have a particular material that I'm engaging with, then I tend to even have a mental recollection of, what is actually there, right? So it becomes easy to recollect when I put a demand on my memory. What if you are using just a bunch of, different materials, sometimes it becomes, difficult for you to have a grasp, a proper grasp of what you're studying, right? So I think that's just it. That's how I approach my studies and the materials that I used. Are you there?
Oh, okay. So you've answered what questions now? Oh wow. Now the questions are now just jumping, really gushing in. I'm now. Okay, so you and Busai have answered is it the question of after class, how did you process, or like w- can you see the chat, the questions? Which one would you like to choose, please?
Um, Damini says, after classes, how did you usually process your lecture notes? Did you first clean them up using slides or statutes before studying? And at what point, if at all, did you consult textbooks? So yeah, for me personally, after lectures, of course, I took down notes during lectures, but those notes were not really comprehensive. So what I usually did was that after lectures, I would consult the slides, I would consult even some other material, so that I'll have, a very good holistic view of the points that were being made before I actually put down something more concrete that I could actually refer to. My lecture notes were not very well organized, for me to use, right? So that's what I did. For some persons, they may have had very well organized lecture notes at the end of the lecture, but it was not that way for me. So I had to consult slides, consult materials before I could be able to put down a summary of the particular topic in a very concise way that I could actually refer to at any time. And then the second part of the question, at what point, if at all, did you consult textbooks? Well, I only consulted textbooks when I found I wanted to get, more context or more clarity on a particular point that I didn't really understand, because textbooks can be very voluminous. You have a text giving you history of a particular point, different applications, and all of that. So when I needed that deeper context, that was when I actually ran to textbooks. So I don't know if Busayo has anything to add on that point or question by Damini, but that was how I approached it.
Um, so can I get the repeat of the question? No doubt.
Okay, let me look at it. So the person asked, after classes, how did you usually process your lecture notes? Did you first clean them up using slides or status before studying?
Oh, so for me, most of, like I said, for me, I do not have let's say a particular avenue where I try to consolidate all my materials into one. I was reading directly from sources. So, like I said, I took like 99% of what was being taught in class. So I had that straight already written into my notes. So once I have that, I take my notes, I read directly from my notes, and then I read directly from the material side by side. That was it for me. I think the other ambit of the question was, at what point did you consult a book? So for me, I had I had two reading stages. So I had the pre-class reading and post-class. The pre-class is when I'm reading ahead of the topic. Well, this is one of the ways to easily comprehend topics when they are being taught in class, right? So pre-class, I used the books to read that. And as I mentioned earlier, I was reading it like novel. This was just to give me a generic understanding, because no textbooks have a way of explaining. So I just read it to just understand. Then after class, then I concentrated on what I've written in class and then supplemented with the material I was using. But I didn't have like a particular note. So yeah, if it's class lights, well, we hardly had class lights in Lagos campus, but I think we had for popping up classes. I would read my notes, the class slide, and my material side by side. And that was the way I did it. So I was always reading, whatever I was reading side by side. I didn't consolidate them into one particular source.
Okay, have you both indirectly answered the second question? When making your summary notes, did you rely mainly on your class notes and slide? I think you've both answered it, right? Indirectly.
But from my end, I didn't have in some minutes to at the first place. But yeah, I think I've dealt with it.
Okay, so let's go to the next question. This one says, for Busayo, how did you cope with sleep and rest given the rigors of Lagos campus schedules? Classes finish by 5 p.m. from what I've heard, and how did you manage your studies?
So first off, did I really sleep much? But that's another question. But the first question, well, classes did not always finish by 5 p.m. Maybe it has been exaggerated. Right? Okay, there are maybe very few times I finished, but then the usual time was usually 3:30, 3:30. That was the usual time. I know some other campuses finish earlier, but it wasn't as bad as 5 every time. I think it was towards the end of like law school when we were trying to cover topics that we was, clocking up to like 5. So, like I said, to answer the second habit, to be honest, I wasn't really sleeping much. I do not recommend this for anybody else, but the reason why I wasn't really sleeping much was because of my peculiar style of reading. So I had, and also because I was also a group leader, so there was some time I gave to group activities, right? So some time I gave to group to manage it was that make me tired, like mental lifestyle. I had schedule. I made use of my time effectively.
Okay, I think Busayo's network is bad, so he's currently off uh the chat. But I think he already answered the question. He mentioned the fact that he never really slept a lot, but of course, he would not recommend that for anybody. And also the fact that he had a schedule that he lived by, and which is also one of the most important things that you can do for yourself while at the law school. I think the biggest resource that you can have at the law school is your time, no matter how small. So after observing, how the day typically, runs, you really have to flesh out a schedule that maximizes, your time to enable you make the best of the little time that you have. But I think Busayo is back and he may as well finish answering the question. I just decided to give it more context for some persons that would have not been able to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Benedict. So, like I was saying, so I had to, I had to live a sort of regimented lifestyle. So just to give like a practical example, so class ends like 3:30. So my group, I was a group leader, so we had decided that our group meetings will occur immediately after class. So our group meetings, I tried as much as possible not to have it elongated, really. So we had like our group meetings to last for like 30, max 45 minutes. After that, I go to the library. I avoid going to the hostel because I know I'll sleep, really. So I go to the library, I take like let's say 15 minutes, 20 minutes nap right in the library. Then I start reading. I read for like 1 hour, 45 minutes or 2 hours. And I go back to the hostel and I take my dinner and I rest again for like, let's say 40 minutes or 1 hour. And I go back to read. Then I read through the night. Most times I've completed my personality by like 12. Then I have to deal with group work because I was a group leader. I had to ensure everything was in place before the summit. So sometimes it would take me 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. And I'll wake up by like 1. I'll sleep by like 1, sometimes 1:30. And I wake up like 5, right? So like I said, I wasn't really sleeping much. But then all those 20 minutes, 1 hour in the middle of the day that I just tried to take some sort of rest was really where I was trying to balance. But like I said, I mostly lived with schedule. So I was constantly doing this, right? So I got used to it. And also it enabled me to, have more time to read really. But then I had to sacrifice, a lot of sleep.
Okay, I think you've done justice to that question. So we have another question in the chat from Tiami. Uh, Forgive me if I'm ordering your name, please. But the question is, how should one go about forming notes given the bulky nature of the courses? Enlighten us on how you navigated this. So the first thing I would say is that it's not an absolute necessity to form notes because different styles work for different persons. And so it's not a postulation that for you to make a first class or for it to be BGS, you have to form your own notes as a matter of absolute necessity. If it's not what works for you, then fine. But that's the working nature of the entire courses. For me personally, I was not looking at writing down everything. If you typically look at any topic in the law school, we have what they usually call outcomes, right? The outcomes for the particular topic are the things that you should actually know about that topic. So what I concentrated on was just to make sure that the main principles, in fact, the most important principles, everything is important anyway, but the main principles in that particular topic. I have them down. I have the authorities down. So that was what my notes really comprised of. It was not, something so elaborate that it would take a whole lot of time to actually put down. Because if you want to do that, if you want to have to write a textbook for yourself while in law school, believe me, you would not be able to, achieve that. So I just had to be concise, I had to be brief, straight to the point. But of course, I had to cover all the essentials of a particular topic. So that's what, my notes actually really look like. If you have a material like that, and then of course, you are in the lectures, you follow the entire course of the topic, and you've looked at other, should I say, maybe down the line, you've looked at past questions and all of that. I believe even the brief notes or summary notes that you have would actually be enough for you. So that's how I navigated that area. In fact, let me tell you, when I first got to law school, like the first week, the second week, I was actually concentrating on making very elaborate notes, and I could not finish it. The next day, another lecture, I could not finish it. And within 2 weeks, a lot of stuff had piled up, and I was like, bro, this is actually not really possible. So I borrowed myself sense, so to say, and I became more concise, straight to the point, and brief with my notes. And that's what really helped me. And I believe that may have answered your question. And I don't know if Busayo has anything to add on that point.
Okay, for me, with respect to that question, so I personally didn't even take my note taking ended in class. But and after class, like I said, I was just reading straight from my notes and the materials. The best I could do was to make inscriptions on my notes. So that was just my style. So I didn't have to deal with, but then just to cooperate, depending on your style of reading, um, depending on your style of reading, just ensure that it's effective, right? Ensure that you have it achieves the goal you want it to achieve. If it's not, then it means that you have to make adjustments. So with respect to me, like I said, my style of reading was to read longer, right? But then initially I could not complete my reading because at the early days, I was going to sleep immediately after class. And when I wake up, a few hours was not enough for me because I read for long hours. So I had to make some adjustments by, reading and like, starting to read immediately after class, after taking a few minutes rest. I know it's a challenge that people who write, try to, because some people it is when they write that they used to understand. Now, if writing a summary note makes you understand, then you can stick to it. And then if you want to ensure that all the things you need to do has to be in an elaborate note, it means that you have to make some sacrifices. That means you're not the one that, when people go for a break, you go and gist with them. You have to start writing your notes. If you would immediately after class, you have to continue writing your notes because it takes a lot. Like and as Benedict said, if but you will not be you just realize you did not finish today. Tomorrow's topics have come. The next day's topics have come. So my advice is whichever method you are using, ensure it's effective. If you have to make adjustments or sacrifices to, in order to be able to make it effective, then you have to. And then if you have an alternative means, but even writing a summary notes that achieves the same goal, then there's no need to you yourself write elaborate notes.
All right, I think that question is duly answered, and whoever asked it, Xiami Aliyu, I believe you must have had a very complete answer to your question. So I think there's a next question from Z. What advice will you give generally for pre-course preparations, classes, and mindsets that you did personally or would have done differently before resumption? What advice would you give generally for course preparations, classes, and mindsets that you did personally or would have done differently before resumption? I don't know whether Busayo would love to go first.
Uh,
Okay, I think let me go first then. I think maybe Busayo has an issue with this. So before resumption, for me personally, before resumption, I actually didn't really do much. I think I was in Abuja then. I was interning at the firm because my set was a backlog set. So we just heard rumors that, oh, okay, the law school may be having a backlog set, and most of us didn't really take it seriously because we thought we still had a very long way to go before, law school. And then all of a sudden, the whole thing became real. And then we were to resume in about a month or so from when we actually first got notice of the fact that there was going to be a backlog session. So I didn't actually study anything before law school, and I wouldn't really advise anybody to study materials before law school. And that's one thing I see a lot of persons doing these days. They are studying a lot of materials. They already know all the topics and all of that is going to take place in law school. It's not necessarily bad, but for me, I didn't do it. And if I'm going to advise you honestly, I don't think it's necessary. Just take the time you have now, relax and rest so that you'll be ready for law school. Because when you get there, trust me, you are still going to have all the time that you need to do as excellently as you can, right? So I didn't really prepare in terms of studying. But what I did was that I watched a lot of videos on YouTube from persons who had gone through law school. What was I going to, should I expect from law school? What would the environment be like? What would I meet when I get there? And all of that. So that's basically what I did. And I think this session in its entirety is just part of the preparation that you're already doing, so you are on the right track. With regards to mindset, I believe this is the most important thing that you have to work on before you get to law school. Whenever I speak to persons or any group about law school, I always say it, that the fundamental thing that you have to work on, that you have to put in place, the foundation that you have to put in place is your mindset. Because what law school is, I'm sorry to say, has been bastardized, so to say, by a lot of persons. They tell you it's very difficult, it's a fearful place, and all of that. And then you'd come to discover that a lot of persons, in terms of their mindset, they're already anxious, they're already fearful about law school. So what I will tell you in terms of your mindset is that please lose the fear. There is nothing to fear about law school. You get there and you discover that it's just a normal environment. Um, you just have to put in the work. Of course, when I say don't fear law school, I'm not saying you should not respect it, right? There is a difference between respect and fear. You should respect law school, respect the workload that you'd have, but there's no need to be afraid or to be anxious or to be fearful, you know, about what you are going to find there. Because by the time you're already afraid, you're already beating yourself 2-0, even before you get to law school. And trust me, you don't want to be in that position. And then I would also advise that you already develop the mindset that you are going to require a lot of hard work and discipline from yourself. I mean, what I usually told myself when I was in law school is that the program is only 9 months. And after those 9 months, I won't go through the law school again. So whatever it takes, I'm going to actually give in my best. I'm going to punch my hardest. I'm going to be disciplined. I'm going to make sure that I work as hard as I can, because after these 9 months, I'll be done with law school. My law school was in from 224 to 225, and that's like several months, ago. I will not pass through that stage again. But what if I said, oh, I'm tired of this whole thing. right? And I didn't put in the best work that I could have put in, right? And then maybe I wouldn't have achieved what I was able to achieve, but then the time has still passed, right? So why not at that point in time decide to give in your very best? That's the mindset that I had, and I believe it's really helped me, right? So I think that's my 1 cent with regards to that question. Busayo may have some thoughts on it too.
And so I think Benedict has really answered the question. Really, just from my personal experience, like Benedict said, I did a lot of webinars. And so joining those webinars was a way to rejig or to, ensure that I fed myself mentally with positive, information so that, so that I don't really get fearful or, you get a lot of negative and both negative and positive. So it's your choice to choose what to listen to, really. And so I had to develop my mindset, strengthen my mindset going to law school. And then I also did maybe a few, just like a month. I didn't really study like that before. I started gathering the materials. I think I joined a particular mentorship. Just looked through the first few weeks of what we taught in law school at the time. What that did was just give me a general understanding of okay, this is what we are going to do in law school. We have 5 courses. This is what civil litigation is about. But this is what they are doing to generally understand in the first few courses, first few topics. And that was it for me, really. Uh, at the end of the day, when you get to law school, you have to still start reading again. But then it's good to just have a little idea of what is being taught so that when you get to law school, you're not totally lost, right? It's not at that period, you're not trying to understand, okay, what are the materials, what are these? But if you are armed with sufficient information, it will give you a soft landing, while you just, while you get into the Nigerian law school.
Okay, the next question, Busai, I think you go first on this one, is by Eliotonus 1819. Sorry if I murdered your name. Good afternoon. My question is concerning the grouping done by the law school. What were the systems and strategies that were used to coordinate the groups? So I would like to go first, please.
Okay, so I guess that for the grouping system, it could have differed per campus, but then I will just give based on law school campus style. So when you get to Nigerian Law School, when you are doing your usual registration, you get a registration number. Now your registration number, of course, would end either with 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9. So your registration number ends with 1, right? Automatically in group 1. So the number at which your registration ends, that is the group you belong to. So if your registration number ends with 7, you're in group 7. If it ends with 0, you're in group 10. And that was how the grouping system was done.
Okay, the next one is, I think it's somewhat similar. Okay, but it's not about groups, but how did you make sure you finished your tasks while simultaneously having enough energy for the next day? Because I know you were a group leader as well, Busayo. So how did you do that? And Benedict, if you want to churn in on this as well.
So it was the question saying, and so after doing like a lot of studying, how do I retain enough energy for the next day? And well, how do I retain enough energy for the next day? Well, really was I tried to, so I had, it was mostly habits. I mostly did things. So in the first few times when I started, it wasn't easy. Really, I had some lapses. But as time grew, I just became used to it, right? And then there was a particular time in which, yeah, I used to sleep, right? So I slept by like 12:31. That was the usual time. And I woke up like a specific time as well. Although not every day will I be motivated. but I just stand up, and it was mostly a mental willpower sometimes, right? If it was just there are times I didn't feel like, but mentally I knew that I had a schedule for the day. I wanted to meet up to it. So really, uh, I just did it out of mental, willpower, sort of, yeah. And then I sort of tried to stick to schedule, which made it some sort of a habit. So when something becomes habit, it's easier for you to, keep doing it, really. So that was what gave me an idea to keep repeating the same schedule over and over again.
Yeah, I think for me it's basically the same thing. I had a schedule, so I tried to make sure that I actually, was able to cover it for that particular day, right? So at every point in time, I had what I was supposed to do, so I tried my best. But I mean, nobody is superhuman, so there are some days that you cannot meet up, and I mean that's not the end of everything. It's not a death sentence, right? What matters is consistently every day trying your best to meet up with your goals, and that's what matters, and that's what compounds in the long term to very good and excellent success. And sometimes within the week, if I could not achieve my goals, I always had weekends that to just go over everything again and just plug the lapses and the holes where I was not able to achieve my goals during the weekdays, right? So that was basically my approach too, and I think that's not a bad way to go about it.
Um, okay. Thank you for answering both questions. So, after this question, I think some questions below are similar, so we'd merge the questions together. So, this question is: Good afternoon. Thank you so much for this. When motivation vanishes and what is left is discipline, how does one ensure they are consistent with their academic goals?
Let me go first with this. So once motivation vanishes and once left is discipline. So of course, so you would have like a cycle of because it's a long 9 months or so. So it's not every time you keep being motivated. I know. But what that discipline does is that it allows you to keep going despite not being motivated. Really. I think that's what matters. Because motivation is just motivation, really. It is discipline that keeps you motivated. Now, there will be a time where you will not be so motivated, but then because of your discipline and you keep doing it, the motivation will eventually come back, right? Maybe not immediately, right? So there may be times where you are just doing it because you are disciplined enough to do it and are not motivated. And that is important because if you rely solely on motivation, the only the days you are motivated, you put in the work. And then the lack of consistency we will eventually take you away from the path you are trying to tread, right? So it's fine. Really, that is how it's going to be. Well, that's how it was, or it usually is. You will lose the motivation. The discipline that will keep you going. But trust me, the motivation will get back. You get it back, really. And the times where you now lose motivation and your discipline you don't, you are already losing the discipline. Probably you now need a very little break because probably you are feeling burnt out. And little break doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do 1 week without reading. It could be that maybe, some people, for me, my only little break was sleep. Like I would sleep well, really, and I was fine. Once I wake up like this, I'm recharged. Some people, it could be that they watch a movie, just something to take away from law school and wahala. And then when you get back on, you move, right? And then probably you now like you are more motivated. And sometimes when you lack motivation or and stuff, you can always think of the end goal. Why are you doing it? Oh, I'm going to be a lawyer. Fantasize about you when that week are down or whatever. Or if that's not you're not really interested in the week and gown. Just think about the day you'll be finally done with this, and then that will give you some sort of motivation to keep on. Yes.
I think that's a very excellent answer to that question. I don't really have much to say, but just a few things to add. I read somewhere some time ago, I think Limitless by Jim Quick. It's a book. He said that motivation is not something you have, it is something you do, right? So you don't need to wait to have motivation to do anything. You simply just do it, right? Do motivation instead of waiting to, have motivation. And that really leans into discipline, right? And discipline is not something that exists in a vacuum. You can't just summon discipline. You have to have, should I say, mental guardrails that help you to stay disciplined, right? Even when you feel tired, even when you don't feel motivated. I think I mentioned before that I was always thinking that law school is just 9 months, right? After these 9 months, I'm going to be done with this. So whatever I have to do, I mean, I should just do it. And that really helped me a lot to put things in perspective, to know that life would not always be like this, right? I wouldn't always have to study as much or be sleep deprived as much. Although I'm finding out now that it can still be so. I think Busayo can actually attest to that fact, right? But then,
Yeah, that's
but
really true.
then, but then, with regards to law school, I knew that it was just for 9 months, and like Busayo said, if you feel very tired or if you don't feel motivated, maybe you just need to rest or just to, take some time off. And like he said, it doesn't have to be 1 week, it doesn't have to be one day. You can just take a few hours of sleep, watch a movie, go visit a friend, call some friends, and you discover that you are actually refreshed and you feel like, oh, you can actually handle this whole thing again. And this advice is deeply personal, but for me, sometimes I could just dance. There was this song that was trending then while I was in law school, like Joy is Coming by Fido or something. So I would put on my headset, blasting it, and then dancing in my room. I'll tell myself, Joy is coming. This is just a phase and it will pass. And then after that, I feel really good. So it's just about mentally rethinking what you're actually doing and putting things in perspective. It will actually help you to keep discipline when you don't feel like it. And like I said, discipline does not exist in a vacuum. So your schedule, if you already have a schedule that you're working with, you know that even if you are feeling motivation or not, 11 a.m. to maybe 1 p.m. or whatever time is your time for study. So you are at your desk, you pick up your book, you start studying, and then before you know it, you are deep into studies and you're understanding, and then you won't even feel like, oh, I was not feeling like studying the last 5 minutes or so. So yeah, that was basically how I approached the motivation versus discipline, uh, should I say, problem that sometimes may arise while you are in law school.
Okay, thank you, Benedict and Busayo. So we have this like three questions that are almost the same. So at what point did you start practicing MCQs, and would you advise using pre-class tasks as opposed to past questions for bar finals preparation, or should
Um,
you use both?
so this is a very good question. And I think Benedict already spoke to pre-class task. So I'll just give light to that. So I made use of pre-class tasks a lot. Really, it was like a daily thing for me. So because the way pre-class tasks work, it sort of tries to encompass every possible question that can come out from that topic. So it's really broad. So if you're able to confidently answer a pre-class task, you are 90% good, really. So what I did was, so when we like, we had daily assignments, so especially pre-class tasks. So once we get to class and then after the class is done, we sort of try to answer the questions in class. I will have printed out my group's answer on paper. Then any correction they make, I make it the corrections on the paper. Then the next morning, so that the idea is that that day when the topic is taught, I've read it. But the next morning, early in the morning before the class, before the next day's class, I try to see if I can able to answer those class questions based on what I read the previous day. And then times I'll not be able to answer well, I refer back to my notes, refresh my memory. And I did that daily, daily, daily. So I sort of did pre-class tasks every day. Then when I got to the extension period, I was like, oh, I will do pre-class tasks every day, one pre-class tasks every day. This now, the pre-class tasks I'm talking about is strictly my campus zone at this stage. I'll do one pre-class task every day. I wasn't really consistent in the early days, but towards the end, I became more consistent actually. And then I was able to at least go through those pre-class sites over again after the initial time I've gone through it. Now, I also tried to do pre-class sites on other campuses. So what I did was I had a particular group I created. Now, I had at least one person, usually just one person from each campus for all the 7 campuses. So what was done is that every weekend we would send all our pre-class tasks to that group. So it was a repository of pre-class tasks. Now, while I was not able to go through each and every one, I had a an habit of going through the pre-class tasks of other campuses at specific times. So what I did was I would go through today I can just open Kanu's pre-class tasks. Another day I open your last class tasks. It was just random. I just did it randomly. And then that also gave me an opportunity to have more questions and see how other perspectives in which the questions could be asked. So that was pre-class task. Right. Now for MCQs, I was doing MCQ every day, like every single day. There was no day I did not do MCQ. Now my daily MCQ was like was just like 20 questions per day, usually 15, 20 questions per day. I was using this law school per day app, so it was very handy because I could just use my phone and go to the weekly section of those past questions. But then every weekend, I will do MCQ of all what was taught that day based on the topic. So there was this Ayeku material, which had past question MCQ based on the topic. So that was I used on Saturday specifically. So, and trust me, that made me very good at MCQs. In fact, my bar finals, I feel like I don't see, I can't see my results, but I feel like it's just one question and I missed from the MCQs. So I was very good at MCQs because I started from, like I did MCQs every single day, till I wrote my exam. So it made me understand every the possible questions or the way they ask their question. It also helped me with my speed and accuracy in the exam. So yeah, I would advise to do MCQ like from today. But in terms of theory past questions, I didn't really do those. Though I do in my study group, we would do like a few questions before externship. But during the externship, I was very, very big on it. I started with once a week, right? Then I increased it from time to time when I got more comfortable with my reading schedule. Yes.
Thank you. Benedict, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, Busayo has said almost everything about MCQs and past questions, and I totally align myself with what he has said. But what I would just add with regards to the MCQs is that don't just, study them, or don't just practice the MCQs and leave it at that. What do I mean? Most times we discover that some persons will just write, okay, 1 to 20, they practice and they say, oh, I failed number 3. Let me go and look at the answer. I failed number 5. Let me go and look at the answer. That will not really help you much. What I did was, if I actually failed a particular MCQ question, I had an MCQ note that I would just go to my notes. I would take down, okay, what was this principle about? Why did I actually fail it? What was the question about? What was the lapse that I didn't understand? What was the trick that was played on me here? What is actually the principle? So I would write that down, and over time, I was able to have a comprehensive MCQ notes, both from the topic by topic MCQs and then from bar finals, past questions. So that really helped me in a whole lot. Over time, I discovered that, I mean, I knew almost all the questions that would typically come out. I knew the structure of the MCQs, because it's not just about knowing the answer, it's about the structure, and that really helped me. In fact, during my corporate law exam, there was something that happened. I discovered that some of the questions that I answered were drawn from those MCQs, and it is what I had already written down. I had gone over it over and over again, and I knew for a fact that I had this on lockdown, right? So that helped me a whole lot. And then for the class tasks, I also took them very seriously. I think I already outlined my approach with regards to uh, class tasks, sorry, here before. I basically had a Word document that had the class tasks. I made comments on each of the questions. I gave answers to those comments, and it was just a matter of picking up those Word documents and then looking at them, and I was able to, refresh my memory on those tasks just within a few minutes, right? And then for the past questions, I would also advise that once you start practicing them, I think the question was also about when should you start. I started practicing past questions from like the fifth week because at least from that time, a considerable number of topics had been taught. And so I didn't really encounter a lot of strange questions like that because if you start from the very beginning, I mean, most of the topics would not have been taught yet. So you wouldn't really have a lot of, should I say, you wouldn't really know the answers to those questions, and it will be, should I say, a waste of time. So I started around the fifth week, and what I did, especially during externship, was that instead of just casually answering those past questions, I would put myself in exam conditions. I have 30 minutes to answer this entire question. I will set my alarm clock. I would start, writing. And then I would discover that I would actually feel, that tension that usually rises when you feel like we're doing something serious. And when I got to the hall for my exams, I mean, it felt like I had already written bar finals a lot of times, and it was not really, should I say, a mental hurdle, so to say, because I had already gone through that several times because of the practice sessions that I did. So I think that was what I'll add to that question.
Okay, I think you also even answered the question by bias when you said answering the question on when did you start past question and the style. So I think you've answered that indirectly. So this person, I think this question is directed to Busayo because of the Battle of the Weeks. So David the 16th says, how did you have time to do past questions, MCQ, and even Battle of the Weeks if you were focusing on notes?
Okay, so the question is how how did I have time to do past questions, MCQs, all the parts of the weeks if I was focusing on my notes?
Yes.
Okay, so let me explain. So the battle of the weeks in particular was like a weekly thing. It was once a week, right? And then it was for how many minutes should I say? It was for like 25 minutes exactly. So it was 25 minutes weekly, right? And it was on a Saturday, really. So my schedule was on Saturday was different from the weekdays. If it was a weekday, probably I wouldn't have had the time. So it was usually on Saturdays, a few times on Sundays, if I was able to go on Saturdays. So now, why your notes are important. So my reading style was every when I wake up early in the morning, I do those MCQs, right? I do like the MCQs, my daily MCQs, 10 questions. So when I say I do 10 questions, I'm only doing the MCQ for 5 minutes. And then when I mark it and go through it, let's say another 10 minutes. So that's just like 15, 20 minutes. Then I go to class, after class, and then I read my notes at this time. Read, read, read. Then next day. Then, like I said, past questions at the early days was just like if we were discussing it in our group meeting, and it was mostly during the weekend. So I wasn't really focused on showing past questions at the time. Do later on when it got to externship, I had an externship timetable. So it was already allotted specific time and it was catered for. Then during Saturdays, I do my elaborate MCQs in the morning. Then at this time I go through the topics I wasn't able to complete during the week. I try to complete them. Then I do drafts. I complete learning my draft. And then, I do that till one is like 6 in the evening, 5, 6 in the evening. That's when I do the part of the weeks for 30 minutes. After I do it, I go to take my dinner. Then at the time when I'm done with my dinner, the rest of the week's result is out. I check it. I try to see the ones I missed. Why did I miss it? Once I got, I even note, okay, if it's one I just guessed and I still got it, I try to check it. And then after that, the night comes, I study for, one of the classes we have the next week, and that was it. So I was able to do it because I had, I scheduled my time, so I knew what I was going to do at various times, and I allocated time for all these things.
Busayo, so there are like 4 follow-up questions to what you just said now. So please, what are all the materials you use, especially for MCQ? Number 1. Number 2, the topics by topic MCQ name. Number 3, please, what's the name of the material for the topic by topic? Okay, for the MCQ, you said you did it every day. How were you able to answer questions you've not read or what you've not been taught? So those are just follow-up questions to what you said now. That's why I read them out quickly.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is, I will try to put up a link on the live chat. Now the live chat is so the link will contain materials, and also you'll find all these things I'm talking about. Now the app, just the app that I used to do those daily MCQs, which are not going to be in that link, but the app which you subscribe for. I think it's for a nominal fee. I don't know the exact amount. It's Law School Party, so you can download the app. I'll probably send the link to the Instagram page, but then I will send you a Google Drive link. I'll put it on the YouTube chat where you will see the materials. So you will see once you check it, you see a particular material that's like an MCQ compilation. Yeah, so that would be it.
Thank you. So this question is quite important and it's almost similar. So by Tiamiyu and Wisdom. So Tiamiyu said, given the enormous body of authorities in each course, I'm curious how you approach prioritization. As in, how did you decide which cases and sections deserve the deeper mastery for the purpose of
Okay,
exam?
so okay, I understand the question. So there are lots of authorities, really. But an important point is that it was authority per principle. So, for example, one principle will have 62 authorities. I don't give it, I don't really care about the many 61. Once I get one for that principle, it's enough because it is per principle you get marked. Now, at most, subconsciously, I get to know more than one authority for a particular principle. But my focus was getting an authority per principle, right? So, but then even given that, there's still a lot to learn. So people have different ways of learning those authorities. People have an authority book. For me, I highlighted authorities on my notes. So in my class notes, I had an highlighter pen when I will highlight the authorities. So when I'm looking through my notes, the authorities are like, they are glaring at me. So I said I read straight from myself. So I read. So for me, I started reading the authorities from the first day. Some people will start reading authorities later on. But for me, I read it from the first day. So because of familiarity with those authorities, I got used to them. So that was my style. Now, two, I took some sort of, you get to some courses where you realize that learning statutes can be very, very, especially when you have to learn statutes for 3 jurisdictions. So, for example, there is ACJ Lagos, there's ACJ on Lagos, there's ACJ on Kano, there's ACJ on one principle. And because there are provisions of 3 different jurisdictions, you need to learn each of them. What I do is that if I find a case that talks about that principle, I won't learn the statutes because case law is not limited to jurisdiction, so it applies to all, either Kano, Lagos, or Abuja. So I use the case law. And if I can't find a case, is there a particular act that that is common to both jurisdictions? So for example, if I have a provision in the Police Act, and the Police Act applies to both Kano, Lagos, and Abuja. So if instead of learning the ACJ on Lagos, ACJ on Kano, ACJ on ACJA, I learned the Police Act in place of those because it works for each jurisdiction. It is now when I do not have a case law, I don't have a common denominator in terms of a common statute, and then I resort to learning the specific, sections for each jurisdiction. So in summary, I started learning those authorities early. I forgot them a lot, but then because I read them consistently, it was easier for me to remember. So you only need one authority per principle. Once you get that authority, you are good. Two, you find authorities that you can use that you would cover for various, either you will use an authority that covers for various principles. So for example, if one authority deals with X, deals with Y, deals with Z, learn that authority so that whenever those principles come, you don't need to learn another authority for them. You use that authority that applies to a lot of principles. And then try to use authorities that are, that you can use for various jurisdictions instead of having to learn for each of the jurisdictions. And that was like some sort of good strategy to, to learn those anonymous authorities.
Thank you, Busayo. Benedict.
I think Busayo has said everything. I'm completely on all fours with him with regards to authorities, dealing with authorities, because that's exactly what I did. There's nothing to change. I started early. If for each principle I just needed to get one authority and that was enough. With regards to criminal litigation, that has ACJL, Kanu, Lagos, and all, and the AGJA. If there was an authority, a judicial authority that I could find on that point, then that was all I needed. And then, of course, I still started very early. In fact, when I started my studies, like I said, I've mentioned here severally that whenever I studied after each lecture, I would put down the principles and the authorities, right? So at that early stage, I was already dealing with authorities. So by the time exams rolled by, I was very good with my authorities because there's nothing like repetition when it comes to the arts of retention. Repetition is just the surest way. So starting early meant that I had gone over the authorities over and over and over again. So, in as much as I forgot some, but I mean, I was really good with them because I started early, found an authority on each principle, and then, of course, if I could make my life easier by finding just one authority that could go for, several principles, all the better, right? So, I'm with all fours with Pusayo on that. I don't think I have anything extra to add. That's a perfect way to approach authorities in the law school.
Okay, awesome. So there's this question, is quite important, by Wisdom Odichi. So he said, what style or structure plan did you apply when answering a question in law school exam? We all know that it's not just about what you read or how you read, it's what or how it all boils down to how you answer the bar finals. That's what distinguishes 2-1's first class BGS's prize winners.
Um, I don't know. Whenever I get this question from pre-law school students, I always find it difficult answering it because I feel it's a bit premature at this stage because you have to actually attend lectures, understand what the principles are like in the law school before, even if when explained to you, you'll be able to get it very well, right? So I would say it's a bit premature, so to say. But then, trust me, it's nothing really difficult. It's not so different from what you have in the university. Just that at the law school, you don't need to raise issues. You won't have to say the issue for consideration. I mean, you won't have time for that. So basically, you could just, and the type of questions actually differ, right? And from what they require of you, they actually differ. There are some questions you just need to state, I mean, the principle or your position. If they ask you whether a position or an act is proprietary or not, all you have to say is, okay, it's not from your point of view, these are state of affairs or what this person did is actually not correct, it's not proprietary. The reason is because according to you state the law, you now apply the law to the question, right? That okay, in you give the principle of law that applies to that particular question that defends your point of view. You apply it, you conclude. Nothing very, very serious. But at this stage, it will be difficult to explain for pre-law school students, and I'm always trying to avoid, confusing them at this stage. But then what you need to know is that it's nothing difficult. It's nothing difficult at all. And one thing that would help you to actually have a feel of what your answers should look like is when you start looking at your past questions. Remember, even for past questions, I recommended 5th week of resumption, right? When you start looking at your past questions, you'd see, I'm talking about the official answers from the law school. You'd see how the answers are usually structured in a very methodical way, right? From your point of view to the reason, to the explanation of the reason, to your summary and conclusion, right? So I think that's what I have to say with regards to that question. But I would always be open by the time you are in law school and maybe you've spent some time there during externship, preparing for your exams. I'd always be willing to come back and then would have a proper conversation about answering bar finance questions because trust me, that's still a very long conversation to be had.
Okay, true. Busayo, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a few, right? Exactly what Benedict said. Sometimes you don't necessarily, just when you get to law school, you eventually understand how to, right? But though before law, somebody told me how, just told me briefly, right? So in the spirit of what the person told me briefly, I have, if you go to law school party, if you check the Instagram page, one of the posts is how to answer law school questions. So you can just read it there just for you to see. But then the truth is that when you get to law school, they will emphasize it. Like when you get there, they will tell you. But my advice to you is that do not wait till it's exam time or close to exam time or till the middle of to start implementing what they've told you. Try to do it from the very beginning. Now, once you try to answer questions in that finance way from the very start, it is one thing to know this is the style. There's one thing to adopt it when answering. But then once you start doing it from day one, as early as possible, it helps you to understand how to answer the questions by true practice. You're able to make correction, maybe to make, adjustment, maybe to know when you are, you are going overboard or when you are not putting necessary information. True practice become a master of answering questions in the finance way. And then, and it goes to someone just asked, what is this? You try to, because me then, when anybody asked me a question, my mind was just, the default setting was to answer the by finance way. So yeah, in that way, you realize that answering questions by finance is not your problem, really. Because you already default, you already have it ingrained. It's easy for you to reproduce. You don't have to start thinking of, okay, it's just like when you know how to do something so well, you don't need to check the manual. But when you just buy a product, you'll be checking the manual when you want to use it. But then once you've learned how to use it through practice over time, you don't need to check the manual anymore. You just use it. So that is how simple finance question is. When they tell you the first time, you might have to be referring to the manual from time to time. But then once it's exam time, you are already used to it. As opposed to somebody that is now when it's close to exam that you want to start looking at the manual to do it. You won't be so used to it. And that's how it is. But then yes, you can go to the Instagram page, Law School Party. There's a particular post where I broke down how to answer law school questions. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have two more questions. This question says that sorry, something's blocking it. Okay, let me just read it from my phone. In the light of the reading routine expected, how does food and the state of hostel affect the intensity of one's reading? Essentially, I want you to speak on how food and hostel can affect your reading. That's
Well,
what, that's
I
what the
don't
person
think
said.
I don't think I'm the best person to answer this question because I external I was some of my friends said I was moving like a robot because I did not seem to allow any external factor to affect like what I wanted to do. No matter what was happening in the hostel, I just or whatever was happening everywhere, I just sort of was not paying attention to it. But the truth is that if you can afford comfort, right, please do. If you can afford an hostel outside from general hostel so that you can really concentrate and have your room to yourself, please do. If you can, anything, if you can ensure that you eat so that you're not hungry or and stuff like that and prevent it from eating, please do. Like I said, I don't think I'm really the best because anything that was happening, whether I've eaten or not eaten, I didn't, wasn't as if, it was as if I was not paying attention to it. Whether people were in my hostel or not, if my room is not convenient for me to eat, I find a separate spot to eat. So I just found alternatives. Something had to work, right? So, and that was how I lived, right? But then, if you can avoid those issues even before having to find alternatives, please do, right? If you need to eat less so that you not sleep, eat less, right? It didn't matter to me if I eat less, if I ate less or not. But then you understand yourself, right? If you know that living with five people in the hostel, you won't be able to concentrate if you don't have an alternative place to eat and you can afford a single hostel or two people in the hostel, please do. Because to me, my idea is by all means, anything that will help you achieve what you want to achieve and you can afford it, please use them.
Okay, right. I think with regards to this question, the only thing I would say is that please and please, if you can find a way to be financially stable while at the law school, that would be really, really good. Because having that comfort, being able to eat when you're hungry, and being able to maybe afford better accommodation. I mean, generally, I was in Abuja campus. I can't speak for other campuses, but generally, the accommodation in Abuja was not bad. It was very okay. It can be okay for anybody, but the ability to actually have that comfort, to actually eat and be healthy and strong, right? It will really go a long way to help you prepare adequately, study well while you are at the law school. So I think that's just what I would say. I mean, you are a human being, and without food, you won't really be strong to do any other thing. And coincidentally, there's a friend, one of my law school mates, he reached out to me recently and he was like, I should help him with one or two, now, normal 2K billing. And when I gave him, he was like, he actually failed his exams, but what was really responsible was not that he could not, read and understand, or he was actually bad mentally, but just the fact that even to eat was actually a daily struggle, in the law school. So his mind was not even on his books, on his studies, and all of that. So what I would advise, this question is very important because it has made me remember. If you have uncles, if you have aunties, if you have parents, anybody that you can reach out to now and tell them you are going to law school very soon, they should support your journey. Please do, because it will be very important to be comfortable and take care of yourself very well while you are at the law school. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that question.
Thank you, Busayo and Benedict. Okay, so the last question before I ask for your final thoughts is this person says sometimes you read every day and still feel like you know nothing or haven't read enough. Is this normal? Should I keep reading?
Yes, please keep reading because you will not feel that just once. Probably towards the end, you begin to have some sort of very, very good confidence, really, but then you feel like this a lot of times. Right. And then the more you read, the more you gain the confidence, the more you're able to answer questions better. And then if you feel you're not up to where you are, seriously, the next step is you need to know that, okay, I need to keep reading because that is the only solution, really. So let me give you an example. This was around, let's say the fifth week of law school. No, let's say fifth, sixth. Now, I was a group leader, right? And then there's a way the class starts, they will say, students come and answer the question. So they will call group by group to come and answer the question. Now, I had nominated the persons that were to answer the questions for my group, right? But then when these persons when my group was called upon, these persons were sort of they were shy, so they had stage frights. Let me use that word. So I had to, follow them down because usually on situations like that, I would ordinarily just go myself. But they didn't notice that sort of pattern, and they wouldn't have allowed me to just come myself, right? So of course I needed my group members to be there. So so that's to give them some sort of confidence. So I stepped down, I went with them. So it was the three of us that went to the stage. Now when we got to the stage, my mind was not in answering the question. So I wasn't even going down the stage with the idea of answering the question. I was going down the stage to, oh yeah, I'm here with you, nothing to fear, answer the question. Now, so once they gave them so instead of not giving those selected persons the mic to answer the question, they gave me the mic to answer the question, and I was not ready to answer the question. That's why I didn't know the answer to the question, but I didn't go down with the intention. So when I answered the question, I knew the answer, but then I missed a very key point, right, which altered, the strength of my answer. So for example, if I was supposed to have like 5 marks, that important point I missed made it be like 2 marks. And then, the lecturer noticed, she complained that this is what we have been talking about, but she just corrected something similar. And I was so down, like, I knew this thing. It's after like she had already said said I was not totally correct that, and I realized, but I was not able to say it because now she had already taken, the flow of the answer and all that. So at that point after class, really, usually my schedule was to read after. I did not read after. I was so angry with myself. And I was so sad. I was thinking of all the effort because I was reading very well. Like in terms of schedule, I was meeting on my schedule. I was reading out. And I'm like, what is the essence of all this reading that when, even though I know the answer, when it's time to answer the question, I did not pay attention to specific detail. And I was so pissed with myself, which was normal. Like I felt like, oh, I was even saying the ones I know, said I'm not even answering it well. What about the ones I had forgotten? So yeah, I was so all around the place. So of course, my style of dealing with issues like that was to go and sleep. So I slept. When I woke up, you know, the next thing was, okay, what is the solution? And what should be in your head all the time. And I was like, okay, now that I'm reading, I'll try to pay very specific attention. Whenever I'm trying to answer a question, I think very well so that I can ensure that all what I want to say, all the specific details should be in that question, in my response. And that was what I did on forward. If I had forgotten any question, I go back to check. That was the attitude towards it. And that is what you should know. You should know that it is normal. Really, it is normal. I remember I had a discussion with a senior of mine, and he told me it was normal. And this is me telling you that it is normal, right? It's only a problem when you don't do anything about it and you feel it's okay. What you need to do about it, you need to go back, check the answer, and keep reading. And before you know it, you get more familiar, to get better. And funny enough, that particular course I was talking about, I was the best. I won the prize for that course. So you see how funny it is, right? So yeah, it is very, very, very much normal.
Yeah, as usual. I mean, whenever Busayo speaks before me, I don't really have much to say again because I mean he just covers the whole field. But like you said, it's actually very normal. I don't think there's anybody that has passed through law school from BGS over the years to first class students over the years. There's just nobody that has passed through law school that didn't feel this way at one point or the other. It was same for me. I was BGS, right? It was same for Busayo, and as you know, he was also BGS. So it's pretty normal, and I think it's because of the the bulk of the work that you have to do in law school because it's so much. You are taking in so much information. At some point, you may feel like, oh my God, do I really know this thing I'm reading? But if you keep at it and then have the ability to actually tell yourself this is pretty normal, right? You discover that down the line, closer to exams, you'll be sure that okay, you actually have this stuff in there. So I think it's just a process of information retention. I think that's just the process, because if it has been happening over the years and people are still coming out well, then it's something that is actually pretty normal, right? And then one thing that you can also use to counter that is active recollection. For me, whatever I was doing, I may be at the mommy eating, and I just suddenly internally asked myself, okay, what was the principle that was studied again today? Okay, what was the authority? I try to remember. If I can remember, fine. I know that I have this on lockdown. If I can't, then whenever I can access my books at the earliest opportunity, I'm back looking at it. I say, okay, this was the answer. Okay, all right, I won't forget this again. And trust me, I won't forget. So it's a pretty normal experience. So by the time you start experiencing something like that, don't panic. Just know that you're actually doing the work. And when the demand is placed on you, you'd actually produce it, right? So yeah, that's it.
Okay, so we will take these three questions now that are on the group chat, and then yeah, would because we have to respect the BGS's time. So the third question, third to the last is there something you noticed that students miss and stops them from being excellent?
Sorry, can you? I didn't get the question fully.
Okay, so this person said, I just pinned the question. Is there something you notice that students miss and stops them from being excellent?
Oh, okay. This question is a bit relative. There are a lot of factors that one, mindset. So you go to the law school with the mindset that some grade is for some specific set of persons. Me, this is just for me, right? One, stop student because you will not do more than what you feel you can do, really. So if 2-1 is where you feel it's your bus stop, you cannot carry first class. You won't stress yourself with any authorities because you know that you don't need authorities to have to stuff like that. So one, the mindset. Two, it's distractions. So some people don't have like some sort of schedule. They don't have like a plan. So when you don't have a plan, you just do anything anyhow. So it's easy to get distracted if you don't have a plan. So for example, if I don't have a plan, I need to study by like 7. I can just gist like 8 to 9 and I'll be okay with it because it's not as if I'm looking at what I'm supposed to be reading by 7. So yeah, distractions, lack of plan. Three, when people do not understand themselves, right? Maybe they don't use the right strategy. They try to copy others. It's good you can, of course, learn from others. So for example, now imagine I knew Benedict. When me and Benedict and I were in the same campus, we're in the same set. And I'm like, oh, Benedict is writing summary notes. Me too, I must write summary notes. Like, if my style of reading was working for me, it's good. This Benedict style of reading was working for me. It's good. I don't necessarily have to use Benedict style. So that's some of the issues why people, and some people also do not, their approach to their deficiencies is not that. So that's why I always stress on, okay, you've identified the problem. Do not keep crying over it. What is the solution? You've forgotten the authority. You've forgotten, don't just give up. Oh yeah, what is the solution? Let me go back and reread what was the answer. So things like that. And other factors, really, a number. I can't really say all of them, but these are a few things I noticed that make some people not be as excellent as they should have been.
Yeah, yeah. Busayo has made very excellent points, right? Because whenever I speak to students who are going to the law school, one thing that I always really talk about is the mindset that you carry there. If you have the mindset of fear, if you have the mindset that getting a first class from law school is something that is meant for a specific class of people, or it's something that you can't actually achieve, then you've already not given yourself the opportunity to actually be excellent at the law school, to actually do really, really well, because it first starts with the belief, the self-belief, right? And I'm pointing it out, I'm highlighting this because that was the predominant thing that I noticed while I interacted with students, especially the class that just wrote their exams, I think in December, or was it November? I think in December. A lot of them didn't feel like they were actually going to be able to make good grades. They felt um, it was not for them. They felt it was out of reach. So, what I would say is, please believe, believe that you can actually do it, because without that belief, there's nothing else you can do. You've already mentally defeated yourself even before you've begun. And even before starting out, you've told yourself you cannot reach the finish line, right? So how will you be able to reach it? Once you get to the halfway, you tell yourself, oh, even before I knew that I was not meant for this. So you just stop, right? So, but if you believe that you're actually going to be able to do it and do it excellently, I think that's the best place to start. And that's one thing that I've really, really noticed that most students lack the ability to believe in themselves and the ability to take that conscious decision to be excellent. So please, for whoever is listening to me right now, whatever your goals are, if your goal is to make it first class, actually believe that you are able and will be able to do it. That's a very, very good place to start. And other things that Busayo mentioned too are really, really important points. Because there was before law school, there was a video I watched of a particular lady. I think it was even on YouTube. She studied so hard, right? She studied so hard. She said she was always in class reading 247. But then when her results came out, she barely got a pass. And she actually diagnosed the issue herself. She said she was reading without resting. She was just, her studies were motivated by fear rather than a conscious decision to actually read and understand. She felt like, okay, if she was resting, if she used any time to rest, or she was in hostel just taking her time to actually wind down and prepare, she would feel like she was not going to, hit the grades that she wanted to reach. And she overread to her own detriment. So knowing yourself, reading well, and then having that ability, that belief in yourself, right? Ability to believe in yourself that you're actually good. It's is a non-negotiable aspect of being excellent at the law school. So I think that's what I have to add to the conversation.
Thank you very much. So this is about like two questions or three about group members and how to avoid free riders. So something like I watched an interview where Busayo mentioned he changed something about his group. Please, can he share specifics with us so we don't make the same mistakes? You're on mute, Mr.
Group schedule, how group activities can influence or uh, is that it?
Yes, okay. There are three. Let me read all the questions. How do you manage group tasks when some people in your group are very lazy and they leave all the work to you? Number two, Busayo mentioned something about nominating someone from his group to answer questions. What other specifics did he implement with his groups? His group.
Okay, yeah. So now I'm giving you this as from a perspective of a group leader, right? And the truth is that in law school, the way law school is, there's already high tension. Everybody is trying to do things within a limited time. There's already a lot of things to do. So people will possibly want to shank, I mean, that wants to elude extra responsibilities. And I really do not blame people for that, really. Right. I understand your perspective, right? There was a point that if I were not a good leader, I'm not allowed, not do anything to. But then the truth is that if the group is not managed effectively, because when you are managing the group, you're not just having to do assignments, you have to also manage people, right? So what I did is I had a very effective, I sort of created an effective group system that made it easier for everybody. I was able to address people's concerns, right? Now, I'm saying this, um, if you're in a position to, if you're a group leader, you're in a position to know the group leader, you could also recommend this. So first thing was some sort of division of labor. So I had subgroups. So while I was the group leader, I divided the group. So we're like, let's say 100, how many were we in my group? I can't remember the number now. But let's say like 120 in my group. I think that was like the number. I divided the group into like seven subgroups and divided the people into those subgroups. So 120 divided by seven, some sort of equal division. Now those subgroups have subgroup leaders. So now, and I'm also very proactive. When the questions come, I share the groups, the questions based on the group. So subgroup one answer it. Now I now left the responsibility of who within the subgroup to answer the question to the subgroup leaders. I've done the part. So the subgroup leaders take it on from there and have their own internal system on how they answer questions. In some subgroups, they've already selected some specific persons that will answer some courses. In some subgroups, they divide it how they want. So I left it to those subgroup leaders. Now, during our group meetings. Now, group meetings were compulsory, but I ensured it was not so long because having it to be so long, people don't really want to be in group meetings. People want to do other things. People want to go back to your style to sleep. People want to read. So I had to make the group meetings effective. So the group meetings, you will come, sign attendance. In the group meeting, every subgroup has to submit their work. And then there on, you send it to the group. People that have issues, they will look at it in the group, like in the group, they will make their recommendations, and then right there we refer it to the specific person in the subgroups to deal with. It was very effective. If some subgroups have defaulted, we let everybody go. We identify those subgroups, and then at this point, it's the master subgroup leader that keeps tabs on these specific persons. Now, while they are sending the answer to the subgroups, for me, I would have sort of I'll have read the topic beforehand. So I sort of have an idea of the answers and where to find them. So once I say a question is not correct, I tell you, okay, I don't think it's correct. I refer you to page this of this material. You can find the answer there. This should be the answer. And it makes it easier for my group members to deal with. Because when you just say your answer is wrong, and then what do you want them to do? So that was an easier way for them to, you know, easily implement changes. Then I go to, then I have each day, I have like 2 days before you already know that you're the one compiling. And then you only compile once. And so until everybody has compiled that, you now get to your turn. So I have like two compilers each day. So imagine that you only compile once or twice in the whole semester. When it gets to you, you ensure that you do it well, right? So when the subgroup leaders have sent the answers, the compilers will take it from the group, they will deal with it. Then they will send it to my assistant group leader. The assistant group leader's responsibility was to make sure that every group has submitted. Then at night it gets to me. Now there are sometimes that all the answers will get to me. Now sometimes that they've never reflected the changes like I said. But then when I look at it, at that point, it's not really it's not really profitable for myself or even for them, for the group, for me to not start complaining that and start meeting those recalcitrant persons that you are meant to do this, didn't do this. I just, you know, deal with the error myself as much as I can. I submit. As a group, I have to overlook a number of things because we are dealing with people. Some people will not do well in their subgroup, and some people that will report to me. I have conversation with them. I just had to manage people while I was managing myself. So, like I said, those changes I made were the structure. I developed a good structure that allowed for division of labor so that work would not be too much on specific person. Because when I started, uh, I didn't really have some of these things in place and made the work too much for some specific persons. And that was the way I was able to deal with the group structure. And yeah, I think it worked really.
Thank you so much for that in-depth answer. Benedict, do you want to add anything?
Not really, because I was not in any leadership position in my group, right? Apart from, of course, the moot trials where I was the lead counsel. I was not really involved in, a lot of other stuff in the group. If a particular task was assigned to me, I just did that, right? So I don't think I have anything much to say. Busayo has given a very in-depth answer to that.
Okay, so I think just two more questions, but this question is really important. So it's almost like your strategies for each course. This person says, how did you memorize the procedures in corporate law practice? Did you have any memorization hack apart from active recall? Also, how did you memorize RPC? So if you can give like all of your strategies for the 5 courses.
Well, for me, right, what really helped me was repetition and active recall. There are some other persons that actually use what do you call them? Abbreviations that compose songs and all of that. But I mean, we have different ways to actually recall stuff. If that's what works for you, fine. But what worked for me was I basically just tried to understand what I was reading, not just to cram, so to say. For instance, talking about procedures in corporate law, it's not something that you just decide to cram, right? Just try to get a natural flow of what is actually happening. For instance, if you want to increase share capital, first of all, okay, that there has to be a board meeting. Okay, they recommend an increase. The company secretary, the next thing is what? Okay, company secretary has to call a 21 days meeting, to give 21 days notice of a meeting, right? To pass a resolution to increase share capital, and then of course the meeting has to be convened. So I tried to make actual sense of what was happening and understand the information. And once you understand the flow, getting to remember it after you've repeated the information a few times gets actually easier rather than just trying to cram. Because if you are cramming, you are not really understanding anything. You're just trying to force the information into your brain, and the brain works with order, it works with something that you can understand. So trying to understand, first of all, is actually the most important thing. And that was my approach, trying to understand the stuff and then repeating it over and over again such that it becomes second-hand nature. That was what really worked for me. With regards to RPCs, there are also some persons that had abbreviations, had songs to remember the RPCs. It was actually very funny to me, but it worked for some persons, and that's what they use. But for me, I just broke it down. For instance, a particular week, I'll tell myself I'm going to learn from number 1 to 10. That week, I know that I have this on lockdown. The second week, from 11 to 20. Then from 21 to 30. I broke it down like that, and I learned it bit by bit. And in the end, I mean, I knew all the RPCs from 1 to about 54, which is relevant to your bar finals, right? So that's how I approached it. There are other persons that use several other techniques, but I just broke the stuff down, learned it every day, referred back to it as frequently as possible, tried to actively recall the stuff, and at some point, I discovered that, yeah, I'm actually good at this. I think I'm good to go. And from that point onwards, it just became just a matter of going over it again. If you just forgot one RPC or the other, right? So that was my approach, and it went. It was the same for all other courses. It was the same for all other courses. For civil litigation, we don't really have procedures there, but of course, you still have the authorities, you still have the drafts to get to know. So it was just repeating it over and over again, trying to actually understand what I was reading rather than just cramming. Because once you understand it, you'll be able to reproduce it. But if you just cram, once you forget, it's gone for you. Like they say in very good English, Otilo. Right. So that was my approach. I believe Busayo would have like a lot to say on that too.
For RPC, so I was doing 1 per day. So that made me go over the RPC, I don't know the number of times, only 3 to 4 times. In the first stage, I was trying to understand what each rule was talking about. In the next stage, I started paying more attention to the subgroups. And then the more I read it, the more it just talking to my memory. So, like I said, power of repetition, like Benedict has said. For corporate law practice procedure, I try to learn a general procedure. So for example, I know there's a general procedure for corporate governance stuff, or board meeting, notice of board meeting, the notice of general meeting, there's a meeting, this resolution will be passed, and they will do some sort of filing with the accompanying document. So I knew this was the general procedure. Then I now started learning the specifics for various stuff. So I know there's specific for maybe reduction in share capital, or there is specific for increase that is peculiar to this particular procedure, and that then incorporate them to the general one. We made it easier. But at the end of the day, it was more of power of repetition that was made it easier to remember all these things.
Busayo, are you done or was it network?
I am done. I said it was the power. I just essentially said the more you repeat the information, power of repetition is what essentially helps you to recollect all the steps. I made mention of for corporate law, for procedure, I mostly try to learn the general procedure that is common to almost all procedure. And then I now learn the specifics so that I can incorporate them into that. It makes it easier to recollect. And then for RPC, I learned 1 rule per day, and over time, I got mastery of it.
Okay, thank you so much. I know that was a very in-depth answer from both Benedict and Busayo. And to the final question, this person is asking, after one has decided on a material to read alongside the handbook, class slide, and class notes/jottings, is it better to print out such material or read from the screen? Which is better from your experience, and which approach is the best for great retention?
I think it works differently for different people. Personally, I preferred having my materials printed out and looking at them physically, and I love reading that way better. But there are other persons I don't have any issues with actually reading from screens, right? So it depends on the person. Whoever asks the question, if you feel more comfortable reading from your screen, good and fine. That is still very good. But if you absolutely have to print it out, hold it on your hand, and then look at it before you can read it, very good and fine. Though I think I've come across a site. I can't remember the specifics, but saying something about having physical stuff to read is actually engages some part of the memory or whatever, right? But I don't think that counts for some people who can actually really read from their screen and understand, which is actually the goal. So it depends. It depends. There's no canonical way to postulate that, okay, this is how to go about this particular thing, reading from your screen or printing it out, right? So yeah.
Thank you,
Yes,
Busayo.
yeah, just to say, depends on your style. Just to add that, but then you should ensure that whenever you are reading statutes or reading laws or reading authorities, especially statutes, for example, Karma, I mostly had soft copy of all my laws, but I had an hard copy of Karma. Really, it helps to once you read what you are uh, try to retain in your memory, it's easier for you to recollect. So when you see section 5 of Police Act, open the Police Act and read it. If you see section 6 of Kama, and it's good if you can have the physical copy of Kama because that is what you do, especially in corporate law. Kama for the most part of it. So if you have it physically and able to refer it, you can underline, which I did, it helps you to easily recollect those provisions. But besides that, it depends on your style, really.
Awesome. So, um, Before I ask for the final thoughts from Benedict and Busayo, to everyone listening or watching, please let Benedict and Busayo know how much they've really impacted you. Just put it on the chat. Thank you, or I learned this, or I thought of this before, but now I see it in a better way. Just, it's good to be grateful sometimes because they're sacrificing their time. So whilst they do that on the chat, I just want to ask for your final thoughts to people about to begin this journey of law school.
Okay, let me go first. I mean, this has been an amazing time, and I always tell myself that if I had the opportunity to attend some of the sessions that I've spoke at myself before I went to the law school, then things would have actually been, well, I can't complain how it turned out, but then there are some things I would not have sweated about while I was in the law school. So for me, I would say that you just have to have, as I mean, my final thought, you just have to have two things in check, two approaches, two prongs, right, of your approach. You have to have them on lockdown. And I mean, your mindset, we've already spoken about that, spoken about lack of fear, we've spoken about how to be disciplined, we've spoken about working really hard, we've spoken about grit, right? Your mindset, please have it on lockdown. There's nothing to fear about law school. It's going to be a great experience. You're going to enjoy it. Just respect what the law school demands of you, and you'll be totally fine. And then, of course, the methods that you use, the practical strategies that you use, you also have to have that on lockdown. And I believe I and Busayo have shared a whole lot about how to study, how to practice past questions, MCQs, almost everything you need to know about law school. So I believe at this point, right, you have everything you need to succeed at law school. And I want you to actually believe that. Believe you have everything you need to succeed. Pick out what we've said here, what works for you. Make sure that's what we implement when you get to the law school. And just be ready to have a very nice time at the law school. I'm actually rooting for all of you, and I can't wait for somebody that is presently here right now to win a prize or be the next BGS and tell us that, oh, because of that session I attended, that helped me to actually gain what I've been able to gain today. That helped me to perform excellently at the law school. I mean, that's why I personally take all the time that I can to do stuff like this. So I wish you guys all the best. Please, your mindset and your methods, have them on lockdown. You have everything you need. I wish you the very best.
Yeah, so from me, I would just say three things. One, go to the course with the right mindset. Two, ensure you are disciplined and consistent. And three, ensure you try to adopt the right strategy. Always do a consistent overview, a consistent check of your progress and see what's next to be done. Do not go to law school with fear. You will not need it. And law school is personal. Whichever story you read from anybody, negative stories, especially those ones, make sure you make sure you key into the positive ones. Do your best, you know, and just know that whatever you do during law school, the journey will determine how well your exam will go. Trust me, your exams are not the hardest part. The hardest part is the journey, entire journey throughout law school. And once you're able to do that well, the exams will be very easy. And I wish everyone the best. Thank you.
Wow, and there we have it. Thank you so much, Busayo. Thank you so much, Benedict. But wait, did you both plan it? Your names both start with BB. It's like, is that a code? So maybe the next BGS's name should start with a B, right?
It's not a good though. My name actually starts with Osha. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's how, but yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
a
so
coincidence.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really nice. as like Benedict and Busayo, yeah. But honestly, thank you so much. You guys are really, I mean, you deserve to be BGSs because okay, let me know over. But you both are smart. Yeah, and I like the fact that you both are good guys, like nice. So me, I'm rooting for my girls this year. Sorry, I'm not but it's only fair now, right? Two guys last year at least, one female this year. The next year they can be alternating it like that. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. I really,
I've
really,
mostly been a ladies team, funny enough. I don't know
really.
I don't know what Benedict and I have done, but I've mostly been a ladies team.
Honestly, that's true. That's true.
Oh, that was true. That previous, I see. Maybe that's why God was like, you know what? Last year, let's give it back to the men. That's why two men. So, but okay, yeah. For backlog, it was Benedict. It was a male and then a female. So, like, first was a male, second was a male, and the third was a female, right? While Busaya was surrounded like a shield by female. Wait, yes, females, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but this year, Sha, let's see how it goes. Let's see. Fingers crossed. Busaya said he wants a female. Benedict, what's
Well,
your prediction?
whoever works the hardest, female or male.
No, just choose one. No, it can't be on the fence.
Female, there's a reason why I want a female. Female,
You're female. Okay, so okay,
yeah.
fingers crossed. Same here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone who joined and listened. I'm sure you learned a lot, and thank you for appreciating Busayo and Benedict. And feel free to share the link. It will be on the channel. So for people who weren't able to join at the time and everything. So I'm rooting for everyone about to begin this law school journey. You can definitely do it. People have done it before. Like look at Busayo and Benedict. So all right. Thank you everyone and have a good rest of your day.